Hey guys, DC here. Hope you're doing well. I just want to do a quick video on my custom Atomstack X7 Pro enclosure. I've seen a couple different variations of these that people have made. There's not that many ways to, I guess, go about it, but I've seen a few, and this is my interpretation of it. Before I created it, I looked at obviously what the cost would be to buy one. And I think they're about almost $400 from Atomstack, which I think is a little pricey considering the fact that the machine is about $600. So $400 for the enclosure itself, not including air assist and other accessories, rotary stuff that some people like to get. So it starts to add up there. So me being the type of person that likes to build stuff and make things my own, save some money in the process, I decided to go this route. But hopefully you get some inspiration. I haven't seen many videos at all of enclosures for this specific machine or other ones similar to it. Typically they're building the ones that they purchase from the company themselves, or they're just going about it in a way that it's not my my preference. But hopefully this gives you some inspiration and some ideas and gives you some tips if you're looking to create one. You're somewhat handy, you have the tools to build an enclosure for your machine. And the enclosure I'm going to show you is one that would also work for machines that are very similar sized. And so if you don't have an Atomstack X7 Pro, you can still build the exact enclosure if you like it for a machine that's very close in size. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. Added angles right here, angle brackets, and you can see here, and I'll show you why I did this, but you can see right there, if the camera will focus, that cutout, and that cutout is specifically so when I close this, it goes right over the cable assembly right there. Right over, and boom. And this is like a nice little accent that I did to cover that, and also just because I like the way it looks. And I added here, this is a gray foam that I cut out and glued here, just kind of bring this little area together and kind of seal down here. But if you see, there's a cutout here, obviously, so I can have space for the cables and the emergency stop button. And initially I was actually going to cover that. I had glued 3 layers of foam to put it in the back here, and possibly glue it on the sticker here, and it would be on the inside, and then that way that would be sealed. But what I realized, kind of by accident, but worked out perfectly, which saved me a step and from having to do that or seal any other areas, is that when I turn on the fan, you can see this actually creates a vacuum, and the air comes in this way, which prevents the smoke and any smell from coming out this way. and it creates circulation inside, which allows the air to flow out. So I can sit right next to it and run projects and smell nothing, even though there's a giant hole here, which is interesting because you would think you'd have to seal everything, and you want to be kind of closed off to a certain extent. But I think just having like a cavity open in here, especially in the front, it creates an air draft, especially from just like if you have the door open in the room or other windows open, it'll funnel through, and when it's running, you can actually put your hand here and you can feel some of the airflow kind of moving around in there, which is pretty interesting. So I'm very happy with the way that came out. But you can see all of this is made out of basically 5/8 inch thick particle board, and everything you see here, the handle and the particle board itself, the plexiglass, which you can see I had to cut out here. I had to cut this out by hand using a tape guide that I use, and then a ruler and a rotary tool with a diamond encrusted, basically a rotary cutting disc. But everything you see here you can find at Lowe's, and I was able to make this fairly inexpensive, other than of course time, effort, and the fact that I did have to buy a mini circular saw to make straight cuts. Some of the tools that I had were super old, and they weren't suitable for making straight cuts. And when you don't make straight cuts, you create a lot of work on the back end from having to try to straighten things out in sand and whatnot. You can see here I added some washers here, which is what you want to do if you decide to go this route. That way you don't crack the plexiglass itself when you're tightening down. You want to distribute the pressure, so I did that on every corner. And again, all this you can get at Lowe's, even the hinge. This hinge I already had from a previous project that I took apart, so I had a few of those. I used one for that. The same as the handle, I already had this handle here, and so that saved me that. But you can find those two parts at Lowe's, since that's where I had purchased it previously. And you can see there's a seam here, so I did this on purpose. So I have this piece that comes out all the way here and stops there, and that was designed to be like the base for the fan. Now I thought this was pretty cool. When I first started the project, this is kind of how I started with that idea in mind. You can see there's no bracket here at all holding this. This actually comes right up. And what I ended up doing is, actually, let me turn off the fan just cause. So you can see here, I actually engraved that with the laser. That dip is basically a groove that's just big enough to fit the lip of the exhaust fan, and then I ended up cutting out the center with a router that I have, and I had to make a jig for it to be able to cut it the right size. It's not 100% perfect, and what you can see in there, that dark kind of charred stuff, was actually from the laser, because I attempted to cut it out without using the router, but it's a pretty thick material, and then it actually started burning in a certain section right there, as you can see. And then I had to stop the laser, and then it almost ruined it. Actually created a huge fire inside of the laser head, and kind of melted and warped my air assist 3D printed nozzle that I purchased. Everything is fine, and I'm glad I caught it when I did, but I decided to just keep the part, sanded it down, and leave it like that. But this allows for you to basically just slide in the exhaust, and it doesn't move at all in there. And that's what I wanted to go for: minimalistic, clean, and not so much stuff going on. Now this is the AC Infinity. This is basically a booster exhaust fan, so not necessarily what you would use in an exhaust situation as the first fan, but it works really well. And then this is also the AC Infinity exhaust inlet. This is the 6-inch version. They sell, I think, a 4 and I think an 8, and it kind of goes up from there. Again, I didn't want some big bulky thing. I imagined that 6 inches would be sufficient, and it was. Previous to me building this, I actually had basically a mic arm that I bought specifically for this, which I had clamped to the table, and it would kind of go over the laser. And I had it on, basically running, and it made a difference. Obviously just not as good as having the enclosure, of course, but it did make a difference from nothing. And I was able to kind of position it around, and I had to make a hole here and basically threaded that with the tap and drilled and kind of screwed in the adapter that was basically connected. In fact, I'll even show you, where is it? Actually, it's in the other room, never mind. But yeah, this is the AC Infinity 6-inch exhaust fan. This is actually very affordable. You see a lot of guys that do like growing and hydroponics and just growing stuff in their house and have like growing tents and whatnot, and they use these a lot, but they use like beefier versions. And this is kind of like a higher end brand that I kind of researched. I spent a couple days researching this, and so I didn't want the silver looking one that looks very commercial and kind of for unfinished construction areas, if you will, like attics and stuff. And so I like the black, so I went with the black duct as well. And this right here, I think it was about 35 or 37 bucks compared, and a lot of them are like, you know, 100, 150 bucks when you get the beefier ones, the 6-inch, the 8-inch versions, and all the stuff going on. I didn't want to go too crazy with it, and so this actually worked out really well and works really well. Today's the first day that I'm testing it out. I basically finished the whole project like 10 minutes ago, because I just finished putting the latch on. I'll show you the latch in a moment. But basically, this duct runs right out the window, and I have my air compressor right there, which then runs into this little distributor down there and runs into the enclosure itself. And this is my control for the fan. And that compressor, if you're interested in it, I will put the link in the description as well. I actually recommend that compressor. It has a higher CFM rating than what the Atomstack was rated for, and for a lot cheaper. That's, I think I paid about 30, I want to say about 30 bucks for that, give or take 28, 30 bucks for that, compared to like 120 for the Atomstack version, which actually is a weaker system. And one thing to mention too, if you're going to create one of these, or any enclosure really, the shorter the tube, the more airflow you're going to get. Same thing with like water hoses and stuff. The longer the hoses you're running, the more resistance you're going to receive, so you're going to receive less pressure. So give yourself some slack, but don't have it so long where you're going to lose pressure at the end of the nozzle, right where the laser is. So that's something to keep in mind. But this plexiglass, as I mentioned, I actually had to cut it here. I hadn't considered that until yesterday when I was gonna finish putting the plexiglass on, and then I saw this and I was like, crap, this is an extra step. So I had to cut that out, but I think it came out pretty well, considering it was done by hand. And then this lip was extended just about 1/8 of an inch, which was actually an issue because it crossed the hinge path, this seam right here, about 1/8 of an inch, and that would be an issue when you would open the lid. It would start sliding back, and if you went too far back, it would probably crack this. So then I actually had to do the same thing, tape this up, use a ruler, and then hand cut this with the same rotary tool and cutting disc. And I decided to just leave it like this. Maybe I'll clean this up. I'll decide if I want to leave it like this or not. It's not super bothering me, but everything else I made sure was super flush to the edges, and everything was sanded down after it was put together. But this took me several days to do because I didn't have the proper tools, and I had to fix a lot of mistakes, and then I ended up having to buy the mini circular saw, which I highly recommend. If you don't have any tools, even if you do, and if you're running like, you know, the 7-inch, 7.5 inch cutting disc, like a circular saw, those are a little harder to deal with, and the mini circular saw saved the day. I had that, and then I also had to get a proper workbench so that I can clamp everything down properly. The table I was using was not working out for me at all. It was actually costing me a lot of time. And I actually left this here. This little lip is about 1 inch long. I left that lip there on purpose in case I wanted to clamp like a light or something like that. I'll have a little area to clamp something, some type of boom arm or something like that. And then I just finished wrapping this up. So this is basically what holds the door open. So basically, this is just steel cable with a cable clamp, and I screwed a washer into here to hold it, but it still allows it to pivot. And then it comes up here to this little guy, and basically, when this is open all the way, I installed this here, and then I basically just hook the other end of that to there, and it holds it up pretty solid. And so this is working really well. And that light, I might run a cable through here to be able to run it consistently, but this is a rechargeable light bar that I have here, and it's just placed there for now, but it's working the way I need it to, so that works for me. And then you can tell I of course did my own wasteboard, and this is at inch increments and also half-inch increments, and I also have 1/4 inch horizontal and vertical, which are perforated, as you can see, all the way across, so that I can see everything, what the actual work area is. And that's took me a little bit to create, but that's actually been useful. And then inside the project, I actually modified from left to right. Instead of being 16 point something inches, I changed the workspace to be 16 inches exact width-wise, so that 8 inches is the dead center rather than being a little bit off. That's just a preference. And then I made all the snaps and the grids to be 1/4 inch increments. So that way I'm always landing on a 1/4 inch somewhere increment. And so that's proved to be pretty useful as well. But overall, it came out, I think, really well. It did take some time, and if you're handy and you're looking to get ideas to, create one of these, that's the purpose of the video, to hopefully give some inspiration, give some idea of the way to go. There's different ways to run this. I've seen people that don't have this box sticking out here. They just have a larger base and all of it is enclosed. I get that too. The reason I did it this way is because these particle boards that they sell at Lowe's, they come 2x2, and so before I created the enclosure, I had a wasteboard already, and you can see that I have those clamps in there, those L brackets, and I use those, which you can also get at Lowe's, I believe. And I've added them to 3 of the, you won't be able to see it because of the bars, but there's one there and then down here as well, down there, and that holds everything down to the board, of course. And so I use that because the measurements were actually perfect enough for me to get, like literally perfect, just big enough for me to get everything. You can see how much space I actually have left on the edge of that, so it allowed me to get the whole machine on there perfectly. So I use that as a starting point. So basically you can make this entire thing with, I want to say 4, it's going to be 4 of these 2x2 sheets, and they're like $6.50, I think it's $6.38 currently at Lowe's, which is great considering the prices of wood right now. So it was the most affordable route. It was thick enough, solid enough, and easy enough to work with. So I just have the cables running through here, but I'll show you. I actually had to remove the whole machine off of the base and shift it to the right about 1/2 inch, because where I had it, the motor, if you can see, was touching the wall. So when I started working on the enclosure, and I realized, oh, this isn't gonna work, so I had to actually flip the wasteboard on the bottom around, start from scratch essentially, and shift it. So I just have basically a 1/4 inch of space between the wall and the motor, and then the same over here, if you can see that. Let me get the camera to focus. There you go. It's about there. So you can see it's about 1/4 inch on each side. So that's where you need to start first, so that you make sure you have the spacing. And that's, to me, that's perfect spacing. And everything is working excellent. Now I can sit here and work on projects without smelling anything. I was literally in a one of these. Actually, I'll show you. In a respirator the other day when I was testing the canvas material that I had painted and engraved, and obviously that's paint, and you're burning paint, and it's a high power and it's consistent since it's doing the whole canvas. And that was actually pretty bad. It's a strong smell and it lasts a long time, and you'll get a headache immediately. Now it's just not good for you to smell. So this is going to be an upgrade. Like, I literally sit here and I smell nothing. I've tested a couple cuts on wood, and overall it's working exactly as it should. So I'm really happy with it. I put a lot of work into it. It wasn't as efficient as I said because I didn't have certain tools, and I didn't work for a couple days, a little bit inefficiently. And I had a different type of wood here that I was testing out, and that didn't work because the wood glue was failing me, and I was rushing to try to get things to dry, and it didn't work out at all. And so I decided I had to go out and get another sheet for the front and the top, and I ended up doing plunge cuts and having one piece instead of having planks of wood going horizontally, which then I would have to cut out. So that was a better route. And if you're gonna go this route too, actually I just remembered, there's actually, instead of getting the 4 2x2 sheets, which is what the Wasteboard is, and it's not exactly 2x2, so you have to measure it. One of the sides is a little longer, so keep that in mind. When you buy building materials, never exactly what it says. They're all going to be equal, but one side is not going to be a perfect square, essentially. So you can take that into consideration before you start cutting anything. But they also have the 4x4 sheets, which are basically double for a little cheaper. I think it's like $11 for the sheet compared to $6.38 for a 2x2. So it's actually cheaper if you probably get 2 of the 4x4 sheets and then work with that and cut that down to size. But again, I love it. I love how it came out. I'll turn off the light so you can see how it looks. And this is like a dedicated, basically Mac setup that I had to bring from life. This is an 09 iMac that I had to bring back from the dead because all the, of course, new operating system software does not load, so I had to put Windows on it, and that was a whole project. But anyway, that is now the setup. And if you have any questions, let me know. If you need measurements, I can write them down, but you can probably tell from here it's fairly easy to understand how everything comes together. Again, just go based off of the 2x2 sheet that's on the bottom, and just get either 4 of those or 2 of the 4x4 sheets. But I hope that helps. I didn't see many videos of people creating enclosures like this. You might see a couple pictures inside of a Facebook group and something like that, but there's still a lot of thinking involved when you're trying to figure out how to do it. And I think the Atomstack enclosure, I think, is right around $400, which I think is expensive considering the machine is like, I think I paid $575 for it. And so, of course, you start getting into accessories and all that fun stuff. So, and in the case that I want to extend the railings, there is some room for that, I guess. At that point, you're just basically doubling things, and this will still be the front. This can still be the top, except you might have to create a second one of these and have it here, something like that. So it's not fully like locked in place where you won't be able to utilize it if you had a larger setup. But again, I'll put the links to anything pertinent in the description. And if you need help or have any questions, let me know. But I hope this was useful, and I'll be sure to answer any questions that you may have. But I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.